Happy Wednesday, y'all. Finally Wednesday. Dude, it's been the longest week ever. It is July the 8th, and these are some of the headlines on bizarrebus.com. Does a series of mystery explosions mean next war about to begin over in the Middle East? And here, for that matter, would we be involved? Arrested under new law, Hong Kong protesters are swabbed for DNA. Is America heading for a civil war? A lot of people say yes. And man believes he may be vaccinated against COVID-19. All of that and more. You can check out the source news links that I'm about to read to you on bizarrebus.com. Does a series of mystery explosions inside Iran mean that the next big Middle East war is about to begin? Over the past several weeks, I've been talking to you in many videos about these mystery explosions around the country that has happened very strategically at sensitive locations inside Iran, and it's become obvious that we are witnessing. It's not just a bunch of random accidents. For years, the Israeli government has pledged that the Iranians will never be allowed to develop nuclear weapons, and several of the sites where the mystery explosions have taken place have direct connection to Iran's nuclear program. For example, there was a very large explosion at Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment facility on July 2nd that I did a video on yesterday, and it's being reported that some officials believe that this explosion was caused by a powerful bomb, not just a fire. They made very light of the situation last week, and we know now it's not. Israel was behind an explosion and fire at Iran's Natanz nuclear complex caused by a powerful bomb. A Middle Eastern intelligence official with knowledge of the incident told the New York Times on Monday. A member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps confirmed to the Times that an explosive was used in the incident as well. And of course, there have been several other mystery explosions, and there's speculation that computer viruses similar to Stuxnet virus that has been used years past may have been involved in at least one of the blasts. 5 recent explosions in Iran may have been caused by the computer virus similar to Stuxnet. And 2 of the blasts took place at power plants, one at a missile research, development, and production site, and a new uranium enrichment centrifuge center. It's become clear that the Trump administration does not intend to take military action to stop Iran's nuclear program, so the Israeli government has been forced into a position where it must make a very tough choice. Either Israel must be willing to accept Iran's nuclear power, or Israel must do something to stop it from happening. At this point, it's been confirmed that the industrial shed that was destroyed during the explosion at the Natanz uranium enrichment facility was in fact a new site for assembling centrifuges. And that would definitely be a logical target for the Israelis to hit. When asked about the mystery explosions, the following is what the Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz said. When Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz was asked, he reportedly told Israel Radio, "Not every incident that transpires in Iran necessarily has something to do with us. All of those systems are complex, they have very high safety constraints, and I'm not sure they always know how to maintain them." Well, I mean, that's entirely possible. All of these complexes they have supercomputers running them, and I suppose unless you had the right people running them, how would you know? But that's not considered a denial by Israel, so there's that. Israel's spy agency Mossad claims it has recently thwarted a series of planned Iranian attacks on Israeli embassies around the world. The Intelligence Bureau has halted terrorist plans in Europe and elsewhere. The Iranians are becoming increasingly frustrated by the success of Israeli covert operations, and they want to find ways to strike back. Embassies are typically easy targets But thankfully, the Mossad has apparently been one step ahead of all Iranian efforts to target embassies so far. Needless to say, all of this is happening at a time when tensions in the entire region are rapidly coming to a boil. It's definitely coming to a head over there. The bottom line is that the Middle East has been on the precipice of a major war for years, and it certainly isn't going to take much to push things over the edge. If the Iranians do not stop their nuclear program, the Israelis are going to continue to hit them, and that will eventually spark a war. And if Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu goes ahead with his plan to annex portions of Judea and Samaria, that is almost certain to spark a war too. We have reached such a critical moment, and it appears to just be a matter of time before the great conflict erupts. That is, to say, very concerning, extremely. The next headline is arrested under new law. Hong Kong protesters get swabbed for DNA. As Hong Kong sees life change rapidly under a new security law, protesters have quickly learned that actions that weren't worthy of police attention a little more than a week ago could now warrant an arrest. DNA sample and search of their home, in addition to the possibility of jail time. Hong Kong police made their first arrest last week under a sweeping new security law imposed by China, taking 10 protesters into custody. 6 men and 4 women, ages 15 to 67, were arrested due to acts of inciting or abetting subversion or secession, police said. At least 6 pro-democracy and independence pamphlets and poster bills that have been distributed during past demonstrations without triggering arrests, according to lawyers representing the protesters. Police collected DNA samples from them and searched their homes. Dude, so you're out protesting, they do your DNA, then they search your home? Since when is that part of the deal? I guess it is over there. Over the past 12 months, protests have at times paralyzed the semi-autonomous Chinese territory. Hundreds of people have been detained and their mobile phones confiscated, and in some cases, the information stored on them collected. Pang said she believes it's the first time genetic data has been taken from protesters arrested for minor offenses, so they must be keeping some kind of database. It is unnecessary, intrusive, and disproportionate, she said. I don't know why they had to take DNA samples. We don't know what kind of database they're trying to build, which might be sent back to the central government in Beijing. That's exactly what they're doing, dude. They're building a database. Since its introduction last week, the legislation has sent a shudder through free speech proponents and prompted activists to dissolve political groups and shut down social media accounts. Hong Kong on Monday asserted sweeping new police powers, from warrantless searches to online surveillance to property seizures. That risk is spooking businesses. Hong Kong police have had the authority to collect DNA samples for more than a decade, but it was typically only used in assault or drug cases. So they're stepping it up. The few protesters who had DNA samples taken from them by police had been charged with more serious offenses, including weapons possession and attempted arson. Dude. The move to show force from Beijing, which drafted the new security law behind closed doors, leaving residents of Hong Kong bracing for its impact and confused about how it will be applied. China already uses DNA to keep track of its Uyghur population. Uyghur must be a city name. Something critics argue is used for racial profiling and systemic discrimination against the ethnic group. It seems to be uncalled for, says a legislator who represents the technology industry. The UK and US have accused Beijing of violating its promise to maintain the city's semi-autonomous territory for 50 years, with Secretary of State Michael Pompeo blasting the Communist party's Orwellian censorship in Hong Kong. Both officials in Beijing and Hong Kong have repeated assurances that the laws would only target a small number of people. They're just doing what they want, dude. That's all. Period. That's it. So I figured I'd give you the weather today, since I'm going to do all this in one video. High heat blast set for most of USA. Phoenix temps at 118. Record power demand is up. Let's see. In parched Southwest, renews threat of mega drought. Christina is poised to become the first hurricane of 2020. Like, we need that shit, right? And then, so back to the news stories. Is America headed for a civil war? Of course it is. I think a lot of us think it is. This guy who wrote this article, he's like, in last week's article, I discussed the issue of American balkanization and the rapid migration of conservatives and moderates from large population centers and states that are becoming militant in their progressive ideology. This is at shiftplan.com, which is SHTFPLAN.com. Some are here because of the pandemic and the harsh restrictions they had to endure during the first lockdowns. Others are here because they can't stand hostility of identity politics, cancel culture, and race riots. Either way, they are fleeing places with decidedly left influences. This is happening everywhere. That's how bad the situation has become. Rational and reasonable people are willing to leave behind their old life and risk it all to keep a margin of freedom. Basically, the left wants total socialism. I read yesterday, and have proof and have linked it, that the BLM has, one of their leaders is claiming they are absolutely Marxist. They are trained Marxist. They teach Marxism and socialism in colleges, dude. I'm so not making this up. Look it up, dude. Anyway, first and foremost, conservatives are primary producers within American culture. If we leave the leftists to their own devices, there's a chance they will simply implode in on themselves and eat each other because they have no idea how to fill the production void. The recent developments in the defunct Chaz Chop autonomous area are a perfect example. Exactly. Those people don't have the slightest clue what they're doing, and it showed. They ran out of food day 2, dude. Nobody was in charge of that at all. Except with that dude with his guns and his people, that's it. That's all they were worried about at the time. Third, if the leftists decide they don't like what we have separated and are thriving on our own, and they attempt to antagonize or attack us where we live, then we hold the clear moral high ground when we smash them to pieces in response. Some people might question if we're actually to the point of open conflict. And this has been going on. There is open conflict. This guy's speaking in this article. They might accuse me of doom mongering, which I'm sure people accuse me of doing as well. Others may argue that conservatives are acting passive and that we will never take any action. In other words, we've been silent. And let everyone have their say. Known as the silent patriots. These assumptions are common right now because such people do not understand how history progresses and how group psychology evolves. Domestic war is not something pursued lightly or haphazardly. The average person knows, at least subconsciously, that it's better to seek resolution or to remain patient as events unfold. That's exactly what I've been doing. Just trying to remain patient. It's hard though, because I do have my own opinions about what's been happening. And I have expressed those on video, although I know I shouldn't a lot of the time. And as we know, the cards are stacked against us, and that if we act rashly in any way, we will lose position in that culture war. So we let the leftists spit and rage like Mad Men for a little while. Each day, people who were on the fence when it comes to the culture war witnessing this and coming over to our side because we're the only side that's sane. Conservatives have not been sucked into a reactionary stance yet because they are thinking logically and refusing to play the game for now. In some ways, it is how we enter the fight that is more important than the fight itself. To understand why, we have to look at the bigger picture beyond the left-right conflict. Dude, so true. As noted last week, the political left is a tool for a greater agenda. I've been saying that, dude. They are being used as a weapon of chaos by globalist interests. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy fact. Millions of dollars have poured into Antifa and BLM-related groups through elitist donors like George Soros and his Open Society Foundation. I found an article yesterday that proves he donated millions of dollars to them in 2018. I had a spreadsheet from earlier 2020, but alas, it's disappeared. I wonder why. Globalist institutions like these have been influencing the extreme left and promoting identity politics for decades. This is openly admitted. What we are witnessing in 2020 is simply the culmination of a half a century long of propaganda campaign that created the modern feminist movement, victim group status, entitlement culture, etc. The reason for the agenda should be obvious. Chaos creates fear, fear creates division and crisis. And crisis creates opportunity, meaning the extreme left is going to start a war because that's exactly what the global elites created them for. This has been the plan for decades. I have a video that I've been working on that explains this exact topic. Now, some might suggest that this places conservatives in a catch-22. If we don't fight back, then we'll look weak. We'll be culturally isolated and eventually overrun and wiped from the history books. If we do fight back, we'll be giving the globalists what they want, a civil war. It'll tear America apart. We are this close. For that to be becoming a reality, it's scary as shit. Get your shit together, y'all. I just wish more people would realize it, like how close we are. The suggestion by certain special interests will be that there's only one way out: use government power to turn the tide to our advantage. In other words, institute martial law. I don't really see it that way, says this dude. Once we understand that a fight is coming regardless, our task is to position ourselves with the most advantage possible while keeping our culture and our principles intact. This includes our belief in constitutionalism, civil liberties, and opposition to tyranny in any form. Winning the fight is important, but maintaining our principles in the process is more important, because to fight the monster is the same thing as losing. Trump's cabinet global elitists suggest his complacency in this plan. We still live under a one-party system, pretending as if it's a two-party paradigm. Furthermore, this dude who wrote this is not convinced that there will be an election in November. I'm actually not either. I think a lot of people feel that way. With pandemic lockdowns surely returning as infections spike once again, the U.S. economy will be in ruins by winter. Voting in a traditional fashion will be difficult or restricted in some states. And mail-in or digital ballots will not be accepted by most conservatives because of their history of being used to rig election outcomes. Well, I do vote by mail. I've done that for years, so I don't know I get it. I get what he's saying, but to summarize, if Trump is still in the White House in 2021, get ready to fight back against leftist mobs as well as martial law measures. If you believe in freedom, realize that fake conservatives that support government tyranny will be as much a problem as the Marxist lefties. If Biden enters the White House, expect him to immediately implement unconstitutional policies, including medical tyranny, gun confiscation, and martial law. Either way, it ends in war. So there's really no way out. as this person sees it. And I don't know, I kind of have to agree. If Trump is voted in, there's just going to be it's going to be insanity, just total insanity. People are going to freak out way more than they did before. If Biden gets in, I'm not sure there's going to be a freak out, but people are going to stand up because they're going to be losing their rights. So either way, it's a wrap, y'all. So kind of we need to get ready for that. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I'm going to link there's a lot more to this story. I'm going to link that at bizarrebus.com. And finally, this afternoon, man believes he may be vaccinated against the COVID. David Rock took part in a clinical study for a drug made by Pfizer. Out of Baltimore, a graduate student in Maryland believes that he may be the first person to successfully be vaccinated against the pestilence. David Rock became the first person to be injected with a trial of COVID-19 vaccine made by Pfizer at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. According to researchers, early indications show the vaccine is working by stimulating the growth of antibodies at rates equal or higher to those who have the illness. There is also a component of relief seeing that it's actually producing results that the vaccine is producing antibodies. Rock isn't sure if he received the actual vaccine or a saline solution, but after a slight reaction from receiving a second dose, he believes he is one of the very few people in the world vaccinated against COVID-19. He's probably out partying his ass off. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't party. I'm just saying. He's in college, so we assume. It's exciting. It's exciting from the side of a participant. It's exciting from the side of a graduate student studying immunology, and it's also exciting and hopefully the promise of a vaccine by next year and life returning to a semblance of normal. I hope you're right, dude. I really hope you're right. Rock is expected to be checked again in the following months to see if he truly does have immunity against the pestilence. Pfizer says that if all goes well and according to plan, they hope to have 100 million doses of vaccine before the end of the year. So all four of these stories and many more headlines are linked at bizarrebus.com. Thanks for tuning in today.